Greetings, Son Up on 7 family. Welcome back to your Monday episode. We're so thankful for you joining us today. For the parents or guardians getting ready their kids to school, enjoy this wonderful moment, and we wish everybody, teachers included, a safe back to school, and wish you all the best. It's time for our second conversation, and joining us on our couch, we have Mr. Valdemar Andrade, the Executive Director of TASA, and Senator Janelle Chanona, representing Oceana, Belize as well. Good morning to you both. And today we're going to be talking about the letter that was submitted to the Office of the Prime Minister as it regards to your recommendations when it comes to the Waterloo and the Vulcan project. We hope that for the sake of our viewers, dive in a bit more to understand what was the letter about. And, we have not received a response yet. So what does that mean as well? Right. Before we get into that, though, let's just do a Monday check-in. How are you feeling?
Good morning.
How are you feeling today, Janelle?
Well, I would say it felt very normal coming here this morning because of the traffic and the new uniforms, and everybody's ready to go back to school. So, sending best wishes to everybody for the new school year, and hopefully things go smoothly.
Of course. We hope that. How are you, Mr. Andrade?
Good morning. Good.
It's Monday.
Well.
How is your Monday vibe?
It was a good drive as well. I see all the kids and mothers and fathers rustling and bustling. But as I told you before, I'm still not happy yet because you haven't gotten to turn it yet.
Happy with your Kevin. They're not happy with your Kevin.
I know.
Only Kevin, not
So
Renata.
we'll blame Kevin. Renata says she's willing to go,
I'll
but
take
she's
it.
waiting on Kevin.
You got to let us know when is the next date
whenever
so we can come.
Sure.
For sure. I haven't been to Turn F in years, so it will definitely be a good treat going back there and seeing all the new work that you've been doing there. Oof.
Sure, I understand you tested your live on the streets this weekend, right?
Yes, we had carnival coverage.
Excellent. So
But she's still in heels, so I do not. If the foot bottom of the bun, it never made in a heel. So it's never that hard. That's all I'm saying.
It was
I'm gonna leave it there.
I'm in the bacchanal.
He has practice.
There you go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about, the work that went through into this letter. It's been something circulating for a while. I think the letter was sent out the 25th. Today is the 5th. So it's about 11 days since we've not received any response from the Prime Minister, from the PUP administration. And I want to have you guys give us the thought process that came behind all of these groups that are our groups too as well, because I don't want to say it's your letter. You corrected me earlier, and I'm thankful for that. It's our letter because you're representing us as well. Mm-hmm. And so what was the thought process behind saying, I need to write a letter to state X, Y, and Z? And it was a very detailed letter with excellent points. We're going to go into that afterwards. But I just want to go through what was the idea that we need to write a letter, of what the effectiveness of the letter would do. What was that for you guys?
Well, if I could start, I think there's a couple of things to unpack here, so I'm glad we can dive deeper. But for context, it's also that this is the second letter we've written to the same effect. In November 2020, we also, as a collection of NGOs, wrote to the administration saying, we need to pause everything that's happening so that we can plan. We all know the adage, if we fail to plan, we are planning to fail. Right. And it's really important that everyone involved in this, the public, the investor, the administration, everyone knows what we're working towards so that we can get there, how and when we need to get there. And so it's within that context that we really said, you know what, this thing is going, we saw the government's press release in October of that year. Last year, talking about, each of the 3 ports and saying we're going to come up with a port policy. There are several things still in process. And, the general backdrop to it, the context to the letter is we're doing several things at the same time. And that's not helpful because if we don't address the initial set of things like the plans, the policies, the legislations, the EIA regulations, and then we're going along approving things, then we end up at a crossroads. And we don't want to end up, between a rock and a hard place. We want to end up high and dry and make sure we know exactly how we got there and why we got there, and that's where we want to be.
I think it's important to understand that, I always emphasize this, Belize is a natural resource-based economy. So these decisions that we're taking as a group, because all of us work in a natural resource space, so we're not here to fight. We're here to look at how do you protect your economy? How do you protect people's livelihoods? How do you protect the natural resources on a whole that will keep giving it back to us over and over again? We have a group of people there that I tell you are very dedicated, they're passionate, and they have been monitoring the cumulative effects of a lot of little developments.
Right.
And so many times we pay attention to the big ones, but the cumulative effect of a lot of little destruction of seabeds, mangroves, it adds up, right? It's like I tell the fishers, if we don't emphasize that you cannot take 10 pounds of illegal fish, if I have 200 fishers taking 10 pounds, that's 2,000 pounds of fish. So the cumulative effect is very important that we pay attention to this. And so that is from that vantage point that we're here. Remember, we are partners with the government. And so what we are saying to them, this is what we are noting. This is the technical advice that we are giving. Now, at the end of the day, all of us have to make that collective decision as to where we want to go, because the idea here is that we get the most return from whatever investment is made. That is very critical. Right?
Okay. No, I thank you so much for mentioning that. The fact that it's a collaboration between civil society and the government. And clearly, I mean, you're the ones doing the science behind these assessments and the situation there.
Someone need to do it.
It's very sound. It's very, very sound advice coming from a good place and also coming from a factual place that these are the things that can happen. You know, if we do not take a pause and evaluate what we're doing when it comes to legislation changes and processes and stuff like that.
Sure.
One of the things that the letter highlights was the implementation of agreements we've taken under the Blue Bond. And I feel like that was like very, very important to mention, given that, you know, the Blue Bond has put Belize on the eyes of many, and we are, you know, very beating up our chest because of that, right? But it sounds like we signed on to this, but we were clearly, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, we were not sure as to everything that we need to put in place when it comes to the Blue Bond. Janelle, can you, or Mr. Andrade, can you give us some insight into what the agreement with the Blue Bond should have like entailed when it comes to these environmental?
Sure, I'll start and
projects?
ask Janelle to chime in, because, you know, I think beyond the Blue Bonds agreement, again, it is critical to understand beyond any Blue Bonds agreement, our economy, our social life, our culture, everything depends on these natural resources. 60 to 70% of the revenues comes from the marine space, right? And so you have to pay attention to those. However, when the Blue Bond deal was taken on, remember, this is a financial deal. This is it's basically you know, you're trying to ensure that you're buying a loan at a preferential rate.
Right.
But when a part of that were conservation agreements. Now, those conservation agreements, of course, all of us paid attention to it. We knew what we were getting into. We knew what we have to do. We knew what we signed on to. So to say that we aren't ready, or no, we have to be ready. We have to be there. Now we are under a microscope, because we are now, you know, everybody's like, how did you do this? How are you going to follow through on this? Because as a small country with a small population, the only thing we have to depend on is those natural resources.
Right.
Those are our wealth. That is where we have to go. That is our go-to. And so we have to ensure that we are protecting those mangroves. We have to ensure that we are putting in place the right structures in terms of development. The marine spatial plan is not a you know, a by the way thing and a plan that will sit on a table. It will be a live plan. It will tell you where you should develop. It will tell you where you shouldn't develop. It will tell you where there may be some opportunity, but there will be some fine print and say, if you want this opportunity, you will have to abide by these rules and regulations. And so that is the backdrop to what we are saying here. So we are saying here, we cannot allow any slippage, and worse at this early stage, to be able to do that.
I think the only thing I would add to that is again, the spirit of all of these agreements, because even if you look at our World Heritage Site status, it's also that we wrote and we told the United Nations, we believe this is a site of universal value and importance. So please come inspect it. And if you agree, give us this status. So just like Valdemar is calling out, it's the spirit of it. It's us laying claim to this and saying, we want help to stabilize financing for protection, for development, for science, for everything else. And as you called out rightly, it's the world is watching us now because we've built it, and rightly so, that this is something that can be replicated by other countries. And Belize has always shown, even though we're small, we are big and leading on some of these issues. And that's really it. Do we want to communicate a message that says, I signed on to something technically, but, you know, because there's this loophole here, because there's this out here, I'm going to jump through it. So it's really us just saying, look, we just need to pause, figure out what's happening, and then move ahead. Because it's very clear, you know, the people coming to Belize, watching Belize, and wanting to be in Belize, they know who they are. They're investors. They want to make their bottom line. They have their profits to deliver to their shareholders. Fine.
Right.
But as Valdemar called out, we are a nature-based economy. And if
Yeah.
we don't know who we are and the fact that we can't go anywhere else when the thing done is done, and if we don't take care of it, it can't take care of us.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out, okay, how do we develop sustainably and figure out what happens where? Because otherwise, we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, and our job is, with that what we are putting forward to the world and saying, okay, this is our heritage site. This is what we have here in Belize. This is the Blue Bonds deal that we have had. We have a responsibility on our end now. So on our end as NGOs, as a coalition of NGOs, we are taking that responsibility very seriously. In fact, the Belize Marine Protected Areas Network basically has remodeled its whole program of work to ensure that we can deliver that those conservation agreements under the Blue Bonds, because it is serious and we do a big part of that job. We collect all the data, we have to put all that forward. There are many people there, that are out there really working hard to ensure that we meet those conservation agreements. And so for any slippage to allow, we are taking our responsibility, we're taking our part. So we expect the government to do the same.
Yeah.
Most definitely. I remember something that I loved about the letter too as well is your point on cruise tourism and overnight stays. Can we go into that a little bit? Because I think people, when they think about tourism, they're just like, oh, tourism, we just get money all ends and it's happening for us.
Yeah.
But expanding when we think about this port and looking into the mere fact that we don't really get money like that from the actual cruise tourists. They stay up on a boat for the most part. A nice pretty boat. We have all the nice eating on it, the commodities and so. And we get it from the overnight stay. So your suggestion too as well about, fixing up that area more, like looking at investing in the part that's gonna generate money from us. I think that was very valid.
And it's been true. I mean, Valdemar can tell you years ago, there was a study conducted, I think at the time it was $1 million study, that told us we can develop pocket tourism, very small ships, different places, but you're going to get bang for buck from your overnight tourism. And when you crunch the numbers, and I'm not high finance, that's not my deal, but when you look at the numbers, it's very clear. We have, I think, upwards of 90% of our tourism dollar coming from the overnight stay, but really only 9% coming from cruise. So again, when you look at the cost-benefit analysis and you say, okay, if we're going to do cruise, let's figure out how and where and why to do it, because if we're going to be negatively impacting or degrading sites, because it's not just marine, it's also where are they going to go? What's the carrying capacity of those sites? They're talking about oasis ships, like it's a great thing that, thousands more will come. But what does that mean for, bathroom facilities at Altunha? And does that mean it goes out to other places?
Right, we have the capacity.
And that's why we really say this is on our letter, because it's going to impact all of us. The quality of the roads, we see, what if there are more buses going further because, there's more time to spend in the day. So it's really that we're going into this eyes wide open and figuring out where it is. But bottom line, we've known that overnight tourism is where it's going. And I think the investment towards that has reflected that. But for whatever reason, the administration has said, we'll let market forces decide. And I'm still trying to reconcile that because, again, if we're not planning, then even the economic feasibility of all of those ports within that area, I am struggling to figure out. And I haven't gotten an explanation yet for that in terms of how that's going to work.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so if I may just add to that,
Yes.
I mean, as Janelle said, the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And that is why it is important, right? And we're not saying that cruise tourism doesn't have a place. We're not saying it doesn't employ people, right? But you have to maximize what you have first, right? You have to consolidate what you have first. You have to see where you can get each dollar out. Because, when I was in the cruise industry, you realize that there's a lot of opportunity, but you have to invest in people, build their capacity, sell the right products, right? Because if you look at the BRIA studies at the time, you were getting maybe $80 per day out of a cruise tourist, as opposed to, and we have very high-end, right, tourism in Belize. Our per day, per night spend is huge on the overnight side. And so how do you get what you have in cruise up to a certain percentage, right? And pay attention to that rather than expanding before you do anything else, right? But I also, in the Port of Belize study, right, in the ESIA, right, if you notice there are inconsistencies in the numbers in there, right, in terms of all of this, in terms of the cruise tourism. So you have to be careful that, when you are planning, it's not a game. It's a very serious thing to know that, you have to pay attention to the numbers. What is it that you're bringing? I mean, a simple thing as a road, a simple thing as bypassing Belize City has critical impacts on what you're doing in terms of the economy, in terms of the people that live here.
Definitely. So coming to the present now, you submitted this letter to say the 25th of August. It's September 5th, and there's no response to it as yet. Right? In the letter specifically, it calls for pause of all environmental impact assessments currently in process, including hosting of public consultations. And we saw the most recent public consultation happening last week.
I will agree to disagree that was a public consultation.
Yeah? Which way?
I think that was a perfect case study yet again to show that is not what consultation is.
Okay.
Because if you look at the format of that, it started late, so it didn't start until almost 7. The developers gave a presentation, I think, for 45 minutes to an hour. And then people started queuing up to ask questions. The questions were timed and limited, but the responses weren't.
Okay.
So you ate up a lot of time, and then it came across like, oh, this is an extended public consultation. But if you look at how the time was spent, there was not that exchange, there was not that conversation, and therefore not that meaningful consultation that I walk away knowing, okay, I either got an answer to my question or I need to dive deeper on this issue. This format is broken. It's not working, and we've known that, and it's tragic. And Valdemar can tell you when the Independence and Placencia and Southern communities came out at the public consultation for Harvest Key, there was difficulty there in weighting those public comments into the decision making, so that when it came out that Norwegian was approved, everybody was like, but we had real concerns and we had scientific concerns that had to be addressed, and they weren't. So again, when we talk about the EIA regulations, clearly figuring out how we're going to define consultation is key, because otherwise it just comes across as a checkbox. Had public meeting, check, move on.
Yes.
Yeah, so if I may add to that, right, just off the top of my head, I think it needs, the consultation needs multiple prongs, right? With the House, we have an opportunity to lodge something in writing, so that that's officially there. With this as well, we have to do that because, for example, take one question that was posed by a technical person. This is a person from Port that knows the job. He says, for the geotechnical curtains that you're proposing to hold in all of this waste that you're going to put in situ, give us 5 examples of where this has been done in the world. Because when you read up on those geotechnical curtains, they are not used for those volumes of work, right? Because I think many people, I think it was 50 football fields that we were talking about. Or how many?
We're talking about almost half of the blue hole, 200 school buses worth of material. So 7.5 million cubic meters of dredge spoils. Dana libita thing with it.
And even that is not consistent in the ESIA, right? You don't know exactly what the volumes we are talking about here. And honestly, you don't know what volumes you're dealing with until you start to dredge. Okay. The other issue I have with dredging, right? And people need to understand this, right? Once you initiate dredging, it's a dredging program. It will never stop.
Okay.
Right? So one thing I think many people don't know, for right here at 4th Street Tourism Village, that is dredged annually.
Yeah.
To ensure that the
dredging going to happen.
To ensure that the tender boats can come in. But do you know who pays for that dredging?
I don't know.
We pay for that dredging. It is fronted by 4th Street Tourism Village, but at the end of the day, the taxpayers pay it back.
Okay.
So that's the way it works. And that is why you have to be careful about the details that you're agreeing to whenever you're looking at these.
Thank you for
that could be a whole other show, guys, in terms of the breakdown of that head tax,
which would
how
be very,
that goes
very,
into
very
it.
valuable for us to have that conversation to understand.
We don't know where we'll have our next conversation on Chantel.
Right, so we're winding down this conversation. So I want to ask you both again, since there has been no response from the Office of the Prime Minister in regards to the letter that was sent by the coalition, what's the next move?
Well, the first thing I want to call out, September 14th, there is an extension in the period of time that all of us can write letters about the port expansion. So if you have something to say on this issue, please write in your letters September 14th.
Okay.
Because that is also, in addition to the public meeting, that is also another way that you can submit your letters, either directly to the department or by email.
Okay.
The second thing I want to say is, very often the conservation and the NGO community is pitched as anti-development.
Right.
And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
We want stable livelihoods. We want sustainable development. We want predictability going forward. I think nobody really likes things that come in from the side, i.e. COVID, hurricanes. Nobody likes surprises in that way. But it's so important that we look at these issues, not just as this project, but that it's always going to be something that we're here talking about. And until we fix the context of this and make sure that we have the systems in place so that if a point in time comes and Belize says, we don't want X, Y, and Z here, it should not have to immediately mean a court case.
Right.
Yeah.
If we've already said we don't want strip mining, we don't want quarrying, we don't want this, why is it that somebody can come in and say, no, I'm gonna wear you down.
I'm gonna change your mind.
Exactly.
Let's just
Why-
have a conversation.
Why is it that we can't set the lines and say, you know what, it's okay.
I hear you.
Thanks, but no
Like
thanks.
we don't allow that here. We don't do that.
Yeah, that's not us. And that's why I said it's really time for us, and no time like today, to say who we are and what we want and what we believe we deserve for the future. Because it's nothing more than that, nothing less than that. That it's really the quality of our future. And with these investments coming in, we want that they support our development agenda, our plans going forward.
What
because
we've signed on to.
what we've signed on to and what we want to give all those children in the school uniforms today, what we want to give them in the future. Clean water, clean air, and the quality that we enjoy out at Turnef and Half Moon and all the other protected areas. And it's really important that all of us are engaged in this conversation because, as we've called out, it's really looking at everything in place to make sure that we can not end up always at this confrontation. We are collaborators. We are not confrontational on every single development issue, but we need it done in a certain way. And if the right systems are in place and the right parameters are in place, then everybody would feel more comfortable because there's not going to be a secret deal signed that we find out about years down the road, or somebody come and say, hey, you owe me.
Right.
We're past that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real with this and figure out where we want to go and get there together so that we know exactly what we're in store for. So please get your letters in the September 14th, but also look at these issues and make sure you are playing a role in calling out that we need to fix the inherent problem. We can't go from fire to fire.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
if I may,
Yeah.
if I may add that, I think it is very important, right, that we take our time. That the information, for example, I saw that, the difference in opinion of the community members from Port that night, and we have to take our time to ensure that they digest that information. You're talking about 600 pages of
Yeah, it's a lot of
Material.
information
of
to go
material.
through
I'm
and
sure
to-
they didn't read all of that.
Is a lot.
It is important that they digest it. It is important that they understand, that all of us understand what is it that we're taking on. In my decades of work, nothing that we have done in a hurry worked out.
That's true.
You have to take
Yes,
your
make
time.
yes, what they like
Exactly,
say.
exactly.
Two piece out the tube. We can't put
Right?
it back in.
And so, but it's also important that Belizeans understand that you need to write. In our governance structure, you need to write, lodge it, ensure that your name is there, sign to it. If that's what you believe in, you need to sign to it. You need to be there. You need to be counted. I always tell my two sons this: you need to be counted.
Yeah.
If you're not counted, it's not going to work. Right
So
at the end of the
September
day.
14th, let's count
the
it.
deadline,
It's a
yep.
deadline to send in your letters, guys. Please go out and send in your letters, send in your concerns. Don't be hesitant about this. This is not a time to be quiet.
Get
This is
informed,
not a-
get informed.
Get informed, find out the information, have the conversations, have meaningful conversations, and actual real consultations. Let's try that for once. And so I just want to thank you guys so much for
Thank
being
you both.
here.
Yes.
We'll have a
For
next
having us.
conversation. We don't have our next conversation topic lined up already, but continue the great work. It's for all of us, and we truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank
so
you.
with that, guys, we go to our next commercial break. When we're back, we are going to be talking to the Football Federation of Belize on what some special visitors that happened last week? Stay tuned for all that and much, much more. We'll be right back.